Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. Inshallah, today we are speaking with Shaykh Mehmet Nazim, and he will be telling us about the story of his grandfather, Mawlana Shaykh Nazim, his life story. First, we want to welcome Shaykh Mehmet Nazim. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. How are you?
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. I am fine, thank you. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Everybody is sending salams, and we miss you very much. We want to come to Cyprus soon, but we are waiting permission.
Inshallah. I am sending
Inshallah.
my salams and greetings to everyone, and I am congratulating everyone their holy month of Rajab, Shaban, and Ramadan, the holy 3 months. Inshallah, these 3 months give barakah for all our followers and all Muslims, inshallah.
Ameen. Ameen. Thank you for this nice dua.
Inshallah,
First of all,
we can start.
yeah, yeah, we can start. We were going to talk about Maulana Sheikh Nazim's life story, but I think to start off, we want to have a general idea about Cyprus as an island. I know you like history so much, so maybe you can give us a brief history about Cyprus and how the Turkish people they came to Cyprus, the Ottomans, and especially the ancestors of Maulana Sheikh Muhammad Nazim, how they came to Cyprus. Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Everybody welcome. This broadcast we are dedicating to my grandfather Mawlana Shaykh Nazim, who was our Sheikh and our everything. So it's good that we speak about him because in our way, in Sufism and Tasawwuf, stories are very important, and especially the real stories. So I'll try to give you the life story of my grandfather Mawlana Shaykh Nazim as much as I want, as much as I know. So there could be mistakes, but I'll try my best. So forgive me if I make any mistakes. So as you ask, I'll start from Cyprus. As you know, Cyprus is an island in Mediterranean Sea, and in old books, it's mentioned that it is part of Levant, which is the land of Damascus. So there is history of Islam in Cyprus before the history of the Ottomans, because the first time the Cyprus, at the time of Sayyidina Osman bin Affan, Khalifa of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he dispatched an army from Damascus who was headed by Muawiyah, and they sent ships to invade Cyprus to be Islamic place. So many Sahabas came to Cyprus, and there was fight, but there isn't much details about the fighting. But at the end, Cyprus became part of the Muslim Empire, and they started paying a tax for the Muslim Empire. So at that time also, Prophet's milk auntie, Hiram, we call her Hala Sultan, she came for jihad, for conquest, and she fell down from her horse and became martyr, and she is buried in Cyprus. And she was very dear to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there are sayings which I read, saying that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw her in a dream few times, that she was going to be in an island, in a green island. So from that time, what we know, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned this island. So this is the history of Islam starting in the island of Cyprus, and there are many tabi'in and sahabas, which some of them we know and some of them we don't know their names, buried in Cyprus. But after this conquest, the Christians took the island back, and it was under the Christians until 1570. In the year of 1573, the Ottomans conquered Cyprus because it was very important strategic position. It was between uh, going to Hajj and Anatolia. So it was a strategic necessity to conquer Cyprus. So it was the Sultan Selim II. He conquered the island and made it an Ottoman province. So one of the great grandfather of Mawlana Shaykh Nazim was in this army. So he came in 1573, and he was one of the generals who conquered the city of Nicosia. So there is the walls of Nicosia. There is one portion where he and his army crossed and conquered that area, and the Ottoman military came and conquered city of Nicosia, and they even named after him. His name was Kaitas. So they named this place after him. And then, because of his good services, the Sultan gave him land in Cyprus and told him to stay and helped the spread of Islam in island, making the island a Muslim place. So the history of Mawlana Shaykh Nazim family, at one of his grandfather was this one. This is from his mother's side, and they ended up having a big land and having one of the noble people of the island. And like the prophets, awliyaullah are also chosen by Allah Almighty. They come from always good families. So Maulana Sheikh family from the mother side was very educated and very wealthy and landowners. So they were involved in the politics of the island also. And also they were followers of Mawlevi Tariqa. So Maulana's direct grandfather from the mother side, his name was Mehmet Nazim. I am named after him, and Maulana Shaykh Nazim is named after him. He was a sheikh in Mawlavi order. He was one of the last ones in Cyprus, and he was a very famous poet. He was the last poet, one of the last poet who write poetry in Ottoman language. So this is his mother from his grandfather from his mother side, and then his father side. What we know that they were coming from Abdul Qadir Jailani, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jailani. They were the follower. They were the sheikh of this order, and they came to Cyprus. I don't know exactly when they came, but they came to spread the Qadiri way. So they stayed, and Maulana Sheikh's paternal grandfather, his name was Sheikh Hassan, was one of the last sheikh for the Qadiri Tariqa in Cyprus. So this is a brief history about his grandparents. Yeah, the next question you can ask.
Yes, so we understand that Maulana grew up in a religious and educated family, I think, right? From his grandparents.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, and
Just to
maybe
make it clear, Maulana Sheikh never met his grandparents. They were already passed on when Maulana Sheikh was born.
oh, okay. Um, okay, so
Yeah, yeah,
now
continue.
yeah. So now about his parents, his two parents, that
Yeah, yeah.
they married and they lived in Larnaca or in Nicosia.
And now his family, they were from Nicosia. So what do you say? They got married in Nicosia, and Maulana Sheikh had three brothers and one sister. So they were four boys and one girl. Maulana Sheikh was the youngest amongst the sons, and his sister was the youngest. His father and mother got married in Nicosia, and they were living with their Maulana's father was they were living together with the poet grandfather, because both Maulana's parents, their siblings passed on, so they were the only child.
Mm.
And the reason why Maulana Shaykh was born in Larnaca, his father had a duty, because he was working for the government. He was a civil servant. At the time of Maulana Shaykh Nazim's birth, he had duty in Larnaca for a year. So Maulana Shaykh was born at that time. That's why he was born in Larnaca. But his family was established in Nicosia, and they grew up there, and all his childhood was there, and he went to school also in Nicosia. Yes.
Do we know the house that Maulana was born in Larnaca? Is it known?
Yeah, it is known. It was a house where they were renting. It was near the seaside, and Maulana Shaykh Nazim showed it to several people when the Greek borders opened. And our taxi drivers were taking people to that house. It's still there.
Okay, so
Yes,
then the next step. So Maulana, he grew up really in Nicosia then, right, with his
yes,
family.
exactly.
Yeah, and then he went to Istanbul. And maybe you can explain to us what is the
Yeah.
purpose that the family moved to Istanbul, and you can describe this life there in Istanbul a little bit.
Maulana's father was Turkish nationality. He wanted his children to grow up Turkish, because the Cyprus was under the British rule. So he wanted his children to be more in touch with their Turkish heritage. So they were all educated. So once they finished their high school, he sent them to Istanbul to get the higher education university. So he sent his eldest children there. First, his eldest son, our uncle, great uncle, his name was Nefi. He went there first. He studied and he became engineer. And after that, second brother, his name was Jalal. He went there. He studied. He became a doctor. And the third brother, his name was Hassan. They sent him also to be with their brother, and he studied law. And he became lawyer. And then after the three brothers, when Maulana Shaykh finished his high school in Cyprus, his parents sent him to Istanbul to study his university there. He was studying chemical engineering. Yes. The next question.
Yeah, then we come to that turning point where Maulana decided to leave this career of engineering and chemistry, and to divert his attention more to religious studies. Was there a particular reason for that, or this just happened over time, or?
Maulana Shaykh Nazim was very close with his brother Jalal. This brother Jalal, who was a doctor, he got tuberculosis and he passed on. And his passing was a turning point in Maulana Shaykh Nazim's life. He got heartbroken and he was very sad. And I never heard Maulana Shaykh talking about his brother Jalal. It was like a scar in his heart all his life. He never mentioned anything about him. But his passing on made him so sad that he started to question that he was fed up from this earthly life, and he wanted to devote his life to Allah Almighty and religion. And at that point, when he was sad and he was uh, fed up from this dunya life, he found a sheikh in Istanbul. His name was Sheikh Suleiman. And he started attending his sohbah and zikr. They were Naqshbandis also. And Maulana Shaykh mentioned that this sheikh was from 313, one of them. So he was a strong sheikh. But this sheikh refused to give bayah for Maulana Shaykh Nazim. But Mawlana Shaykh Nazim was attending his lectures, and he was learning about Naqshbandi way. He was learning about Tasawwuf, and in the meantime, they were teaching him about the to be a scholar. They were teaching him hadith. They were teaching him tafsir. They were teaching him fiqh, and they were teaching him Arabic. So with them, he was learning very fast, and he came into a good position as a scholar. But Sheikh Suleiman was keep telling him, "I am not your sheikh. Your sheikh is in Damascus. His name is Sheikh Abdullah. You have to go and find him. That's why I am not allowed to give you bayah." So they were waiting for the sign. You want to ask the next question? So maybe it is related.
Yeah, how he decided to move to Damascus, to start to leave Istanbul and take a trip to, yani take to travel to Damascus.
So he was with Sheikh Suleiman, like as I explained, and he
Yeah.
didn't want to give him bayah. He said, "Your sheikh is in Damascus." So Maulana Shaykh Nazim used to visit the Blue Mosque, and he used to pray there. So one day he was there at Fajr time, and at Fajr time he saw a vision of somebody. He did not say who he saw, but he saw a spiritual vision telling him, "It's time for you to come to Damascus and take your bayah with your sheikh." And in this vision, he also saw Sheikh Suleiman, which he recognized. So when he came out from this vision, he went to the dergah of Sheikh Suleiman. And Sheikh Suleiman, before he greeted him, he told him, "Did you see the vision?" And he said, "Yes." So he said, "It's time for you to go to Damascus." So Maulana, it was a time of World War II. I would assume it's around 1945. So there was tension all over the Middle East. So he took a journey to Damascus, but he could not reach Damascus. He reached Homs, and Damascus was closed. So when he reached Homs, uh, he met Sufi people there, and he was in their company. Then in Homs, he started learning about hadith, tafsir, and also fiqh. And he was improving his Arabic, and he learned also how to recite Quran there from teachers. So this his way of recitation is coming from there. It was a very special kind of recitation he learned in Homs, and he spent 7 months in Homs. Okay, the next question, if you want to ask.
So of course we can say that the most important moment in his life was meeting Sheikh Abdullah Dastani in Damascus. You can maybe elaborate a little bit about that moment, that or that evening maybe.
So after 7 months in Homs, there were news came that there is opening to go to Damascus. So he took a journey and he went to Damascus. And what he knew that Sheikh Abdullah Dagestani was living in Jebel Kashun near Maqam of Muhyiddin ibn Arabi. So he went to the Maqam of Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, and there, somehow without knowing any address, he was guided to go to his Sheikh's house, where the Grand Sheikh greeted him and he said, "I was expecting you."
Mm.
So when Maulana Sheikh saw him, he kissed his hand and feet, and he asked him to accept him to be his murid. So the Grand Sheikh gave him a bayah.
Mm.
And after the bayah, Maulana Shaykh Nazim, before he left Istanbul, he had too much love to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His intention was to go to Medina al Munawwara and to be servant of the Prophet ﷺ in Madinatul Munawwara. This was his intention. He wanted to go to Damascus and take bayah from the Grand Sheikh and continue his journey to Medina. This was his intention. So when he saw the Grand Sheikh, he asked him this question. But before asking this question, when he met him first time, he looked at Grand Sheikh's eyes and he realized that because when he reached the Grand Sheikh, he was already very high. As a scholar, he was in a very high state. He was very well known, very educated on Islamic sciences. But when he looked at the Grand Sheikh, he said, "I am not even a drop in this ocean." So that much he was impressed and fallen in love with his Sheikh. So he asked the question to his Sheikh that I want to go and serve Prophet in Medina. So the Grand Sheikh said, "You stay here tonight with me, and I'll give you an answer and Fajr prayer." So the Grand Sheikh, he saw the Prophet that night, and the Prophet ﷺ ordered him to go and serve his people in Cyprus. So with the Grand Sheikh, he prayed Fajr prayer. They had a lot of spiritual experiences with Mawlana Shaykh. Only Grand Sheikh and Mawlana Shaykh would know this experience, but it was a very special experience that they lived. And after the Fajr prayer, Grand Sheikh told him, "I am ordering you from the Prophet that you go back to Cyprus and serve your own people in Cyprus and teach them their religion." Because it was a time where people was forgetting about their religion. It was a time where religion was forbidden in Cyprus and Turkey. So at this point, the last thing my grandfather wanted to do was to go back to Cyprus. In fact, I don't think he ever wanted to go back to Cyprus. He just wanted to go stay in Medina and live and die there. He didn't want to do anything else. So the last thing his ego wanted was to go back to Cyprus. So it must have been very difficult and heavy for him. But when he received the order, he kissed his sheikh's hand and he started his journey immediately. You want to ask, and I continue?
Yes, I want to be inside his mind in this moment. This is a very tough moment that he left Cyprus very many years ago, from high school, and he has a new life, completely new life now. He's religious, he's wearing religious clothes,
Yeah.
and he doesn't know anybody maybe now in Cyprus. He forgot all his family, and there's no communication to tell people, I am coming, prepare for me, or something. He just goes like this without any preparation.
Exactly. This was a very, like you say, it was a very heavy decision. I don't know how many of us could follow this kind of order from our sheikh, but it was at that moment was very heavy. It was, but this is what the sheikh do. They order you what is heavy for your ego. This is how you improve in tariqah, by following the sheikh in spite of your ego. When you follow the sheikh against your ego's will, that means you are starting to love your sheikh more than your ego. So this is a very difficult state to be in. So
Yeah,
Maulana Sheikh, he took his bag and he left immediately, right after Fajr prayer. He did not even wait, even though it was very difficult for his ego. He did not have anything, no money, nothing. He just went. He went on a bus. He didn't have money to pay the bus, but he just said, "I am following my Sheikh's order. I am just going in the bus." So that bus took him from Damascus to Beirut. So everybody came out from the bus. Maulana Sheikh was shy to come out because he didn't have money. He was gonna go and speak to the driver. Before he approached the driver, one man appeared. He was a Mufti of Beirut. His name was Sheikh Munir. He appeared in the bus and he asked Sheikh Nazim. And Maulana
Oof.
Shaykh Nazim said, I am Shaykh Nazim. And then this man paid the bus driver, this is the money for his bus fare. And he took Shaykh Nazim. And he looked at him. He said, last night I saw the Prophet ﷺ in my dream. And he told me one of my son is coming here. So he will be in this location. Go look after him, look for him, do whatever he needs. And he was very happy to hear. He was very happy to see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's a big honor to see a Prophet sallallahu alaihi
Of
wasallam in a
course.
dream, and he's asking you something. So he was very joyful and very happy, and he realized what an important person Mawlana Shaykh Nazim was. So he came and he told me, "I am your servant. Whatever you ask me, I will try to do."
Mhm.
So Mawlana Shaykh Nazim said, "I've been ordered to go to Cyprus. So just arrange me a vehicle to take me to Cyprus, whatever it is." And this Sheikh Munir, he said, it is time of World War II. There is ferries going once a week. So today is not the day, but I don't know. I can try to help whatever you can. Maulana Sheikh said to him, it's an order. I must go as soon as possible. I cannot remain here. So the Sheikh went around asking in the port. And in the port, somebody said we have a sailing boat which will go to Cyprus, but it will take longer than usual. So my grandfather said, okay, I will go on this boat. At least I am on the way. I'm not staying here. So he went on that sailing boat and he told me it was 9 days,
Oof.
7 or 9 days. It could be took him from Beirut to Cyprus because the weather was not
Mm.
uh, windy to carry the sailing boat. So on the seventh day, he arrived to Cyprus. And when he arrived to Cyprus, first person he saw in front of him was Maulana Shah Abdullah Dagestani.
Oh.
And there, this spiritual connection between them started. This is
Mm.
the power of Rabata. He followed the Sheikh, he swallowed his ego, and
Mm.
against all the difficulty of his ego, he followed it as hard as it was. And at the end, he established this relationship with his Sheikh. And at that point, all his maqams were given to him.
Mm. Subhanallah.
Yes.
Subhanallah. Wonderful story. Like,
It's an
yeah,
inspirational story for
mashallah.
everybody who is in this path, because we are all in this path following a Sheikh. We are on this path. So it's important to know how our Sheikh uh, fought against his ego. Like us, he was human also. He had ego. We are also struggling every day with our ego. But how much are we doing? What? So this is an inspirational story for
Mm.
all of us to see how our Sheikh follow the order of their Sheikh. What they say, no matter how difficult it was. So it's a good story for us to learn and understand, and inshallah, it can help us on our journey, our spiritual journey.
I mean, this goes very well with the next phase of Maulana's life now, his work in Cyprus. how he was bringing people to Islam,
Yeah.
and the effect he had in Cyprus. And I think you can agree that his influence up to now in Cyprus, you can see from a religious standpoint, everybody is aware of who he was and what he did for the community there. And so maybe you can tell us a little bit about his khidmah, yani
Yeah,
taking people for.
I'll continue the story. He arrived and he went to his father. His father saw him, and his father was shocked because he had a big beard, black beard, and a nice turban, and this clothes we are all wearing. We are all imitating him, the Sunnah clothes. His father was shocked, and he said, "Oh, my son, what is this?" He said, "I am not against you being religious. You can practice your religion. I am a religious man myself, but there has been a revolution. We don't use these clothes anymore. This is At that time it was illegal to wear those clothes." He said, "I don't want you to wear these clothes. This is not good for me and for you or for my family." So he was against it. But Maulana Sheikh said, "No, this is who I am. I came here to spread the Islam. I have order from the Prophet ﷺ and from my Sheikh to remind my people their origins." And he started going around in the mosque in Cyprus. First thing he was doing was he started reciting the Adhan in Arabic, because at that time it was forbidden to recite them in uh, they were reciting Azan in Turkish. So Maulana Sheikh was saying, "This is not valid. I have to call the Azan as it is." So he was going and calling Azan in Arabic, and because of this, the police was always after him, charging him with charges. They took him to the court many times. They imprisoned him. So also, while he was reading the Azan in Arabic, he was also going from mosque by mosque and preaching, giving khutbah to the people. And this story he told me himself, which I find it very emotional. I want to share it with everyone because, like, I am his grandson. Everybody who is his follower, they are his children. I don't see any difference between myself and all his followers. We are all his children. So one day he was giving a khutbah in the Selimiye Mosque in Nicosia, and his father was regularly attending the prayers in this mosque. So his father was the attendee. He was attending the khutbah at this mosque, and when he heard my grandfather speaking, Mawlana Shaykh Nazim, he was very touched. His heart was touched, and he was very happy. And after this khutbah, he came to him and he apologized to Mawlana Shaykh Nazim. He said, "Oh, my son, you are a special person. You are a saint. What you were saying was coming from your heart. They were inspiration. I myself come from a family which has a tasawwuf background, so I will not interfere in your dress or anything. I will be your follower." So he was impressed with what Maulana Sheikh was saying. So in this period of time, he went in Cyprus from village to village, sometimes on foot, sometimes on donkey, sometimes on bus, sometimes on car, and he was going from mosque to mosque, giving khutbah and calling people back to Islam, and he was having big following in Cyprus. And because of these activities, the Turkish authorities were very much against him. They could not do anything about him preaching, so they were charging him with the Azan, calling the Azan in Arabic. So they took him to court and they were going to sentence him prison time, long time in prison. So just before his verdict, there was a election in Turkey, and a prime minister got elected. His name was Adnan Menderes. And first thing he did was to change the law that the azan should be read in Arabic, not in Turkish. So when he changed the law, all the lawsuits against Maulana Shaykh was dropped. So he was a free man again. So he continued his preaching and he had a good following in Cyprus. And this preaching and this service he did at that time still continues today. And if there is any survival of Islamic faith, because Turkish Cypriot people are very secular and far away from religion. So any presence of religion in Cyprus, we can attribute to Maulana Shaykh Nazim until today. So you can ask the next question.
Yeah, and you can tell us about the Hajj that he was taking people from Cyprus
Yeah,
for Hajj.
yeah. After spending some time in Cyprus, he went to Damascus to visit Mawlana Shaykh Abdullah, and then Mawlana Shaykh Abdullah kept him with him. He said, "You followed our order. Now it is time for you to spend time with us and learn directly from us." So Mawlana Shaykh Abdullah and Shaykh Nazim, and there was one servant of Shaykh Abdullah. His name was Abu Bakr. He was also from Dagestan. Three of them they went to Hajj together first time. This must be in 52 or 53. I don't know the dates correctly, but it should be around at that time. They took a ship from I think last year. They went through a Suez channel through Egypt, and they went to Jeddah and they performed Hajj together. This was the first Hajj of Maulana Shaykh Nazim. He performed it with the Grand Sheikh. And then they came back, and the Grand Sheikh ordered him to marry my grandmother. They got married in 54 or 53. I think they were married in 53 because my auntie Haji Nagia, she was born in 54. Uh, Maulana Sheikh ordered my grandfather to marry my grandmother Haji Amina. So after he married her, they were settled in Damascus as a family. But Grand Sheikh was ordered my grandfather to go back to Cyprus every year uh, for the month of Rajab, Shaban, Ramadan, and then after the Eid of Ramadan, he would take the people from Cyprus. He will make a Hajj group, and they will take them to Hajj. And from Hajj, he would bring the people to Damascus, visit Grand Sheikh, and he will send them back to Cyprus, and he will remain in Damascus. So he did in total 21 times. He told me he did 21 Hajj like this. He was doing it almost every year. And while he was with the Grand Sheikh, he was serving him Damascus, and they were also traveling within Syria. They went to many places like Aleppo, Homs, and they were preaching people about Tasawwuf. But and Grand Sheikh was Grand Sheikh spoke Ottoman Turkish, and even though I think he spoke Arabic, he did not prefer to give sohbeh in Arabic. So Grand Sheikh would talk in Ottoman Turkish, and my grandfather would translate his talk into Arabic so people would understand. Yes, the next question.
Yeah, we touched a little bit about the marriage with your grandmother. She was not Turkish. She was from. You can tell us her background.
She was Tatar from this region called Kazan in Russia, and her story is there was the Bolshevik Revolution, and they were hunting religious people. They were forcing everyone to be communist. And my grandmother Haji Amina, his father was he was a trader. He was a carpenter. He was very skillful with his hands, and he was very religious. So he was afraid that they will take him to Siberia and make him and his children forget about their religion. So he migrated to Turkey first, and he stayed in Turkey for 10 years. But then the authorities in Turkey was similar to Soviet Union at that time. They were anti-religion. So this grandfather was not happy, even though he was very wealthy. So he moved to Damascus, and they settled in Damascus.
Mm.
And they were living close to Mawlana Shaykh Abdullah Dagestani, and they were his followers. So Mawlana Shaykh Abdullah Dagestani, he arranged the marriage between my grandmother and my grandfather. Yes.
In terms of children, the first child is Hajja Naziha, and then
Yeah.
Sheikh Mehmet,
Then they had
right?
a daughter named Khadija who passed on when she was 3. Then it was my father, Sheikh Bahauddin. Then the youngest one is Hajj Ruqiyya.
Um,
So the one who passed away, she passed away when she was 2. She had illness, and it was very difficult for my grandfather. Uh, what I heard from my father was not born at that time. My father was born just after when Khadija passed away. That's why my grandfather had a very special attachment and relationship with my father. Among his children, I think he was closest to my father. My father cheered him up very much. One of the reasons he just came right after this daughter Khadija passed away. She passed away from a disease at that time, and it was
mhm,
a tragedy. It was a personal tragedy for my grandmother and my grandfather. And my grandfather was very sad, and Grand Sheikh uh, helped him spiritually to recover. And after the birth of my father, he was much better. But I think this left a scar in his heart all his life. Also, this loss of a child. But this also, these are all part of a good story. Like he lost his brother, he lost his child. So you see, the saints are not exempt from the tests of dunya. They get tested heavily.
mm,
So for murids, us, when we have difficulties in our life, we should always remember that also the saints, people who are close to Allah Almighty, they get uh, serious problems and serious losses. So it is part of life. We should be more patient. So nobody is exempt from these difficulties of this life. Even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had a very difficult life. Only Fatima Zahra from his children survived him.
mm.
All his children passed on at when Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was still alive. So this is also a story for everyone to understand that there are tests and difficulties in this dunya for everyone. Nobody is exempt. Yes.
Okay, we can talk a little bit now more about the seclusions, the khalwa that Maulana did uh, under under the care of Sheikh Abdullah Dastani, with him and sometimes without him. There are many stories. Some are very long khalwas, not only 40 days. You can maybe elaborate a little bit about this and the locations and you know.
Mawlana Shaykh, what do you say? He did seclusion in Jordan, which was, I think, was more than 5 months. Could be 5 months or 10 months. I don't know exactly the number, but it was a very long seclusion. And then I think Maulana Sheikh said that Grand Sheikh ordered him One day he came and he said, "This year there is opening to make seclusion." Then he offered all his murids at that time to do the seclusion. Everybody gave an excuse and they could not do, and except my grandfather, Mawlana Shaykh Nazim, he fulfilled this order and he did his first seclusion. I don't know where this seclusion exactly was, but this was his first seclusion for 40 days. And then he did a seclusion after that in Jordan, which was a long seclusion. And then Grand Sheikh ordered him this is to make seclusion in Baghdad with Maulana Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani in his makam. So this was a very special seclusion. So the Grand Sheikh ordered him to go and make the seclusion. So he went to Baghdad. He doesn't know anyone there, and he has never met anyone there. He went to the makam while he's praying and getting ready to do a seclusion. One man came. Uh, Maulana Sheikh was telling me this, that he was bald and clean shaven, and he said he was like 190 height, very big man, and he looked very strong and very angry. And he told my grandfather, "Are you Sheikh Nazim?" My grandfather said was telling me that he was little bit afraid, and he said, "Yes, I am." He says, "I have been ordered to look after you for this seclusion." So then this man took my grandfather and he gave him a room, and he said, "I will be serving you for 40 days, giving you food 2 times a day at these times, and I will be at your service." So he did his seclusion in Shah Abdul Qadir Jilani, and he had a very close spiritual connection with Shah Abdul Qadir Jilani at that time, as he's also one of his grandsons. Shah Abdul Qadir Jilani gave him so much about the Qadiri order and too much knowledge about the Qadiri way. So that's why my grandfather used to love the Qadiri tariqah. So this love comes from him through Shah Abdul Qadir Jilani from this seclusion. So he did 40 days there, and at the end of the 40 days, he just had one jubba clock, and he gave this jubba to as a gift to this man. And Maulana Shaykh said this man took the jubba and he disappeared. And one other seclusion, my grandfather, there was many seclusion 40 days, but I wouldn't know the details about it. I was not born. I was not around at that time, but I am just narrating from what my grandfather told me about his seclusions, about his parts. So there is the other seclusion. This is interesting one, that him and the Grand Sheikh they were ordered to do in Medinatul Munawwara. So they went before Rajab to Medinatul Munawwara. They were there was one sheikh there who was from Uzbekistan, from Bukhara. His name was Mullah Abbas. He had like a dergah there, so he gave them 2 rooms to make one room to make seclusion, and they separated themselves, Grand Sheikh and Maulana Shaykh Nazim, with a curtain. So there they did 5 months seclusion. They did Rajab, Shaban, Ramadan, Zilqada, Shawwal, Zilqada, and Zilhijjah. So they came out uh, after Hajj. This was their seclusion with Maulana Shah Abdullah Dagestani for 5 months. And what my grandfather was saying about the seclusion, that they were getting lentil soup at the size of a small coffee cup, and this was what they ate every day. And my grandfather was saying Grand Sheikh even refused to eat that one, so he would give his share to my grandfather. The Grand Sheikh would only drink tea. He would His room was covered with the curtain. He just had one candle, and he had Quran in front of him, and he was doing his duties there, completely secluded from everyone and everything. Grand Sheikh ordered my grandfather that he should go every day to attend the prayers in Masjid al-Nabawi and come back. He would just go there, pray the fard, and come back without interacting with anyone. And Grand Sheikh had no interaction with anyone. Only interaction they had was my grandfather would lead him Salat al-Tashabih prayer once a day. So they would pray Salat al-Tashabih together, and they would not talk and nothing. They would just do their duties. And my grandfather was saying while he was making zikr, sometimes he would have hal, and he would shout hi, hi to release. He said he was feeling relief by this. And the Grand Sheikh was saying, this is for the weak ones. You should not do this. So after that, he stopped doing this. So for 5 months, they did this seclusion. There was, like I say, no talking, almost no communication between them. And at the time of Hajj, my grandfather went to Masjid al-Nabawi, and all of a sudden he had Rawda open, and there was nobody. It was just him in the Rawda. And then he started praying each part of the Rawda. Then he went and prayed in Mihrab. So while he was praying in Mihrab, he had beautiful smells was coming to his nose. So he thought this was a perfume from the carpet. So he smelled the carpet. So it was not from the carpet. He removed the carpet and he saw the floor, and it was coming from the floor, and this was the smell of the Prophet. This was a story also narrated by him. So they completed this 5 month seclusion at the end. Grand Sheikh Mawlana Shaykh Abdullah Farooq Dagestani told him, congratulations, first time a murid and a sheikh completed khalwa together. So this was a very special one for him. Yeah, then the next question. I hope
Mashallah.
everything is clear.
I just want you to keep talking. Yeah, we heard also that Maulana was traveling quite a bit, not only Cyprus and but some other places. I know, for example, he told me so many times he went to Egypt, for example. Do you know anything about these travels or the reason for it, where he went like this? Because of course, later on in his life, he would travel all around the world.
Uh,
You know.
I think until Grand Sheikh passed away, he was not. He, his traveling schedule was Cyprus, uh, Lebanon, and Mecca and Medina.
Mm,
He did not go Turkey even at this point.
uh,
Uh, he went. What I heard from him, he went to Egypt one time uh, for a visit to visit the maqams there. So that was the only time, and he stayed with Naqshbandis there. There was one derga, but none of our murids later on could identify where it was. So, but until 70, until 74, like I say, he did not travel until the Grand Sheikh passed away. He was just traveling Cyprus, taking Hajjis to Hajj, and until 1963, he was taking them to Jerusalem also. And they were traveling with Grand Sheikh sometimes around Syria. Apart from that, he did not go to other countries.
Okay, maybe you can tell us about the passing away of Sheikh Abdullah. We heard that there were some miraculous situations
Uh,
about that, and how Maulana became the Khalifa, and this. Yeah, and like maybe just a little summary about that.
uh, Mawlana Shaykh Abdullah Dagestani, he gave the secret of the tariqah to Mawlana Shaykh Nazim in Lebanon. I think this was the house of Sheikh Hisham and Shah Adnan.
Mm,
Grand Sheikh, he had a cataract surgery. And after the surgery, he went into a state of like a coma. Then
mm,
after this state, he woke up, and I think similar time Maulana Sheikh had a small surgery of hernia, and
mhm,
then they were staying in the same room, and the Grand Sheikh ordered everyone to stay away from the room, and there he passed on his secret to Maulana Shaykh Nazim. And then he wrote a will, and this will was given to Shaykh Hisham and Shaykh Adnan about Maulana Shaykh Nazim, that he will carry on the tariqah after Shaykh Abdullah Dagestani. And Maulana Shaykh Nazim was, he went to Cyprus because it was Ramadan time. And the Grand Sheikh passed away in Ramadan. I think Shaykh Adnan and Shaykh Hisham, I think they were at present on his passing. So they narrated the story. It is written in the Shaykh Hisham's book of classical Islam.
mhm,
And what I know about the story is the same as what they are narrating, because they narrated the story because they were the first witness. What I know, what my grandfather said, that he got the news in Cyprus and he left in the morning, and miraculously there was no, what do you say, like he catch the flight last minute. He came to Beirut, and from Beirut he came to Damascus, and people were not expecting him, but Sheikh Sham and Sheikh Adnan was insisting that we will not bury him until Sheikh Nazim comes, and he is coming. And Sheikh Nazim appeared just before Maghrib, and then
mm,
there they did the Janaza prayer and they buried him together with Sheikh Adnan, Sheikh Hisham, and Maulana Sheikh Nazim. And
mm,
according to the story of Sheikh Adnan and Sheikh Hisham, Maulana Sheikh Nazim told them to get out and close the door, and then Sheikh Nazim stayed some time in the grave after he was buried, and there was spiritual communication between them.
mm,
And then when he came out from the Makam, he saw Shaykh Hisham and Shaykh Adnan, and they both came and gave bayah to him immediately. He said, "We are with you here, and hereafter you are our Shaykh." So they were the first ones to take bayah from my grandfather at that point. So the next day he went back to Cyprus to continue his duty. So this was the event of passing Shah Abdullah Dagestani.
mm. So this was 1973.
Yes,
Uh, I think during the war with Israel,
yes,
October. Yeah. And now, so in the 70s, Maulana, he stayed to live in Damascus, in his house in Damascus, and then they started to come some European and American murids, like Sheikh Hassan Daik, like Sheikh Abdul Haq from America. They
yes.
started to show up, and I think there was starting to be some problems for the government or something like that, which
Yes.
made him move to Cyprus, right?
Yeah, the story is after Grand Sheikh passed away, 74. Uh, also, my grandfather lost his connection with the Damascus. I think he had more connection with the Grand Sheikh. That was the thing which was keeping him there.
Yeah.
So at that time, like you say, that the government was getting more tough, and also apart from Sheikh Hisham and Shah Adnan, the other murids of Shah Abdullah, they struggled to follow my grandfather. So, so the situation there with the other murids was also tensed. So that's why Maulana Shaykh Nazim first was planning to move to Lebanon, but then in Lebanon nothing opened, and then he had inspiration to come back to Cyprus, so he came to Cyprus in 1980. So until 1980, they were staying in Damascus, and then at one point he was staying 2 weeks in Beirut, Lebanon, and 2 weeks in Syria because of his residency problems. But uh, after Grand Sheikh passed on, nothing was same in Damascus for my grandfather. And one of the advices of the Grand Sheikh to my grandfather was that he should be the one spreading the Naqshbandi way to the west, to the Western people. So Maulana Sheikh was appointed to go to the Western countries, and the Grand Sheikh told him that there would be an opportunity opening, and after that, start going to the West and live here. So he was looking for these opportunities at that point. So when he started traveling to the Western countries, also mainly to Europe, slowly, slowly, this connection with Syria was finished.
Yeah.
And I would like to say, you ask the next question. Probably it's the what I want to talk
Yeah,
about.
about the opening for London. I think he started to go to London, and a lot of Murids they trace their connection to Sheikh Nazim from London. Personally, I myself I met him first time in Peckham,
Yeah.
so we have a lot of connection spiritually with London. So we like to understand how this happened, or how not.
After Maulana Shah Abdullah passed on in 1974, uh, there were in 1974 there was the Cypriot War,
Yeah.
and then the Turkish Cypriot government banned my grandfather to come to Cyprus. So there was this gap until 80 that he could not come to Cyprus. So he would spend more time. He was spending more time in Lebanon and Syria, mainly in Lebanon. In 74, there is Sheikh Mustafa Alayli in Lebanon. He was also one of the murids of Grand Sheikh, and he's still a follower of Mawlana Shaykh Nazim, and he's follower of Sheikh Mehmet. We have so much respect for him. May Allah bless him also. His elder brother was a wealthy man, but he was very sick, so he needed to go to England for medical treatment, but he did not speak English. So he told my grandfather, "Oh, Sheikh Nazim, please take me to London and translate for me. I needed a medical treatment there." So Maulana went to London first time in 74 with this man. So he went there, then he started going to there was Turkish Cypriot community in London, but they did not have a mosque. So he started to see Turkish people and Turkish Cypriot community, and they started hosting him and liking him and becoming his followers. And also there was one man. His name was John Bennett. He was one of the follower of Gurdjieff, and I think Maulana met him in 74 in London. And some of his followers, which were Western people who were interested in Tasawwuf, they, after John Bennett passed away, they became followers of Maulana Shaykh Nazim. So the Western people in England was through John Bennett's connection. They started to be his follower. After 74, he started going to London regularly every year for Ramadan, because he started having a community, and then this community grow up, and then there was need to have a mosque, because the Turkish people did not have a mosque there. They would they would rent a hotel lobby or racetrack for the dogs to pray the Eid prayer or Juma prayer. So my grandfather bought one synagogue it was called Shakwal Lane, and he converted into a mosque, and this was paid by one Kuwaiti man who was a murid of Mawlana Shaykh Nazim. Because Maulana bought it on, he got loan from other people to buy it, and then this man knew about it, that there was loan. He said, I don't sleep comfortable when I know that this mosque was bought by a loan, so he cleared the loan for Maulana Shaykh Nazim. So this was the first mosque for the Turkish community. For so from that time on, every year he was going to London, spending the 3 months there and Ramadan. So people started, each year he went, more people started coming. And not only the Turkish or Pakistani or Arabs, the Western people, many people were seeing him and becoming Muslim. He was so much attractive for many people who were lost and who were looking for way out. He became light in their lives. So from 77 to 2001, he would go every year, spend at least 3 to 6 months in London. And most of our murids in Europe are coming from these years Maulana spent. Like you said, did yourself, you met him there. Many even Muslim people who had nothing to do with religion, they found him in England and became religious again. It was very funny, but they would come from Muslim countries. They would try to stay away from Islam, but they would find Maulana Shaykh Nazim and get back to Islam.
Yes, you are describing me exactly. You're describing. At that time, Ramadan in the 80s, Ramadan was in the summer,
Yeah.
so we would be having summer holidays, and we would have fun to go to London, to go
Yeah.
to shopping and nightclubs and this. But one day I found myself in Peckham Mosque, and Subhanallah. So as you were saying, this meeting people in London, for example, Raja Ashman, a lot of these people, it opened for him the door to go to other countries that he didn't go before, like Malaysia, Indonesia, South Africa, these kind of travels. This was very amazing, and for a sheikh to go to these countries. A lot of the other sheikhs from Arab countries, and they couldn't go and they couldn't communicate in this international way. It's sort of an international language that Maulana had.
But Maulana Sheikh, one of his main attributes, he was very, very approachable. From a very small child to an old man, whomever you want, you could really approach him easily. And he would take everyone seriously, and he would had a great empathy to everyone. And while he was communicating with the people, he would give his 100%. So this what made him, amongst other things, special. But him being approachable for these people who were in the Western countries, because there is always this prejudice about Islam. This prejudice has been coming from the history, because Muslims and Christian countries were at war many times. So it's easy to make bad propaganda against your enemies. So this propaganda stay in the mind of the people. So what Maulana Shaykh Nazim did, he break this propaganda in many people. So him being approachable to these people uh, made it easy for communication because he treated everyone as human. As he, for him, there was no nationality, no race, no so simply everyone was a creation of Allah Almighty. Everyone was human creation of Allah Almighty, and they deserved the respect because they were creation of Allah Almighty. He had this approach. That's why he could communicate with anyone. Like you said, he met people from Malaysia and people of from royal family he met, and these people opened the doors for him to go to Malaysia. Then he met people of Brunei, and then he was a guest of Sultan of Brunei many times, which Sultan of Brunei benefited from him, from his spiritual wisdom many times. And then people from South Africa. Like last year, I was in South Africa with Sheikh Mohammed. I met people who were students in London, and that time they
Mhm,
met Sheikh Nazim and they became his murid. Then same thing,
mhm,
many people from Sri Lanka who were students in
mhm,
London that met Mawlana Shaykh Nazim and they became his followers and they spread the tariqah and they opened the doors for him to go and visit Sri
mhm,
Lanka. Same thing with Pakistan, same thing with many other countries.
mhm.
Yes. The next.
No, for sure. Yeah, I want to tell you, like in the 90s, if you were Muslim and you were in London during Ramadan, everybody will tell you you have to go to Peckham. There's a sheikh there. He reads Taraweeh like nothing, like from heavens, you know. And like you were saying, his recitation was very special, very unique. His Taraweeh prayer was, mashallah, well known, famous
Yeah.
in the whole world. Yani, subhanallah.
This was a prayer from inspiration. So what he was reciting was the inspiration coming to him what to recite. And when he was reciting, you would feel the manifestation of this ayah. So everybody would feel it. And
Subhanallah.
as I mentioned, also he learned this recitation in Homs. So it was a very special recitation, and not many. I think it's a recitation which is extinct, which is not practiced anymore.
Ah,
So,
ah,
and he had a very majestic voice. So
yes. Your father
I prayed
inherited.
with him Taraweeh few times. I have not prayed with him Taraweeh in London, but I had honor to pray with him in Cyprus when he stopped going to London. He was leading Taraweeh for us here, so I had
MashaAllah.
that honor.
Alhamdulillah. Do you, maybe your father knows more because he was traveling with him to all these countries. If you can share some stories here or there, you know, about some travels that he was doing around the world.
Yeah, my father traveled with him frequently. He was his traveling companion. Uh, what do you say? One thing which was unique about him, he did not do any program. He would wake up and according to his inspiration, he would do what he likes during the day. So
Subhanallah.
what they say, he would get up, he said, oh, let's visit here. And then they would go and visit that place he's mentioning without any program. Then out of nowhere, many people would appear and there would be somebody he needed to see and he would see him and he would give him something spiritually. So it was all with him, there was no programs and no schedules. Unlike today, we are all about programming and scheduling.
Yes, yes,
He was nothing like this. What they say,
yes,
everything was unorganized, but this unorganization was the beauty of it because he was
yes.
living the manifestation of the moment. So this is what
MashaAllah.
I can tell you. But specific stories that doesn't come to my mind at the moment. But maybe later questions it might come.
Okay, so the last trip from Cyprus that Maulana had. You can share with us?
The last trip we had was I was in that last trip. It was 2005. We went to Damascus and Lebanon. So it was just end of Shaban. It was after 15th of Shaban. Uh, I think this was he was very old, but he was still strong, and I think he wanted to visit the maqam of the Grand Sheikh for the last time because he knew after this it wouldn't have been possible. At that time, Mawlana Shaykh Adnan, Qaddashallahu Shuru, may Allah bless his soul, he, it was summertime, and I was with Mawlana Sheikh together, and one day he called us, and he said, "Oh, there is one nice land in Damascus, which is for sale, which would be good to build a community and derga." So my grandfather got excited. He said, "Okay, let's go." So he told me to call my father, and I called my father, and he told my father, uh, get a ticket for us to go Saturday. So my father bought the ticket. So I was not in the plan. Then Maulana Shaykh Nazim told me, "Oh, you should come also." So he invited me over. So, and also this was 2005. Shaykh Hisham was in seclusion. Maulana Shaykh Nazim sent him to do seclusion in Damascus. So he wanted to see him also when he was coming out of the seclusion. He came out of the seclusion, and he wanted to be with some of his old murids and visit the awliya of Sham. So we went, and Shaykh Sham and Shadnan greeted us. And then Maulana Sheikh congratulated Shaykh Sham for his seclusion. Then we went around looking for the land, but there was no land. It was just an excuse for Maulana Shaykh Nazim. Then he visited the maqam of the Grand Sheikh, and then he visited the Umayyad Mosque. I was with him, and then wherever he goes, he was giving sohbah to the people, and people were always very happy to receive him. And then from Damascus, we went to Lebanon. So Sheikh Adnan, may Allah bless his soul, he drove us from Damascus to Lebanon, to Beirut. So I was in the car. I was honored to be in that company. And then Maulana Shaykh Nazim visited his murid in Lebanon. It was, I think, was many of these murids also, they could not come to Cyprus. So it was a good visit. So it was like saying goodbye to his old murids also. And then I had to come back early. Then Maulana went to Tripoli. From Tripoli, he went to Aleppo, and he spent like 5 days of Ramadan in Aleppo. Then he came back to Cyprus. So this was his last trip.
No, in 2011, Maulana made the public video that we all saw about announcing that your uncle Sheikh Mehmet would be his Khalifa.
Yeah.
And we all Murids, we saw it, we know about that. But I was wondering, as a family, what did you know before, or how did you know like this?
Okay, this question I would answer it differently. I loved Maulana Shaykh Nazim too much. I never thought there will be day in my life where he will not be. So I never thought he was gonna pass on while I was living. So I never gave any thought who would be the successor, or what will happen. This was I thought it was also bad adab
Mm,
to think about this. So I never thought, I never saw anyone, with all the respect to everyone, I never
mm,
saw anyone fit enough to uh, fill his position.
Mhm.
I loved him that much. So I never entertained these thoughts. But since I am young, I was also close to my uncle. I had so much respect for him, and I always knew that he was a special person. And the way he was behaving and carrying himself was as awliya. So what
Mhm.
do you say? When Maulana Sheikh declared him and appointed him, I was glad and happy, and I knew that at when he declared him, I knew that he would be the only one who could fill
Mhm.
this position. But still, I have until today, I was never thinking that there would be day without him. I never thought. I always thought he would always be there. I'm sure he is still there spiritually. I am sure of that. But the love I had for him prevented me of having any thoughts that he would pass on. But this is
Sure.
dunya. What they say, this is life. Everyone born, everyone will die. So he passed on 2014, and we are continuing as it is. Life goes on. Yeah,
Mm. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. يعني memory of Maulana to bring tears to our eyes. يعني
yeah,
MashaAllah.
of course.
So you are just describing about that time in the hospital. I remember you told me such a beautiful story that you had some alone time with Maulana when he came, when he woke up from the coma, and you were just alone with him in the room. And that was such a beautiful story. If you can share it with the brothers and sisters, uh, I would
Yeah,
be very thankful.
yeah, when before he went to hospital, I think for like a 1 week, he was in the state of coma. He was neither alive or dead, but you see, he was his soul was gone, but his body was there, so he was not responsive. So when we took him to the hospital, it was he got really sick, and there was a nurse, so he stopped giving any response. So the nurse called an ambulance, and ambulance came and took him. So we went to the hospital, and they were saying he's passing on. So these are the last moments. And all of a sudden, after a few hours, all his body functions came back to normal, but he was still in coma. So when his body functions came to normal, we said that the elders of the family decided that he should stay in the hospital because in the house it's difficult to give him a proper care. So at that point, because of his sensitive situation, all the four siblings, my aunties and my uncle and my father, they agreed that each one visits him once a day. So my father, he gave his turn to me one day. So I went to the room. So he was in a coma state. So when I appeared, he opened his eyes and he was happy to see me. There was a ventilator, so he showed the ventilator. He said he cannot talk because of the ventilator. Uh, at that time, doing. I was always doing charities on his behalf since he got old. He would always give this charity to this person. So I had some sadaqah money on me when I went in Cairo. So I told him this is the sadaqah, the charity, and I said I will distribute it to these people on your behalf. So he started smiling, and little tears came from his eyes. Then he told me to recite some Quran. Uh, I am not a good Quran reciter, but he liked to listen for me to recite Quran because I think because I was his grandson, it's nice to hear your children to recite for you. So I recited the last bit of Surah Mulk for him. Then he gave me a hug and smile, and then I left. I didn't want to bother him more. So this was in the hospital, and I visited him after that many times, but he was never responsive until just the night before he passed on. Uh, the doctor called me. He said he's awake now, so he's out of coma. So I went and I brought my uncle and my father. I told them, come quickly. So I went and found them. And I took them to Mawlana Shaykh Nazim, and his eyes were open, and his hand was moving, and he gave his hand to my father and my uncle, and it was like a goodbye, last goodbye, and then he was happy they were there. And after this moment, we came out. The next morning, he went into a fatal state and he passed on. So this was like a goodbye for his children. Yes.
Mash- Mashallah, thank you very much for sharing such personal moments. I know this is very difficult for you. You know,
Yeah,
uh,
like I mentioned, I see all our followers as brothers and sisters, and I saw all of them who love Mawlana Shaykh Nazim as their children. So this is why I saw. So I am just sharing something from their father or grandfather to them. So I am happy to share.
the other thing, the last final question I want to ask you is, yani, you learned a lot from your grandfather, so many lessons and so many advice. But what is the one lesson that you can think about, that you think this is the biggest lesson that you ever learned from him, that you want to give to us to also to learn? Yani?
My grandfather was repeating this, so there are many things like you say, but this always stuck my mind. Give everyone their right. He was always, whoever has right, don't hesitate to give. So this thing always stuck my mind, and what you say, when he was seeing the people also in his last days, this was something he was telling them: give people their rights. What is people right? Give them. So this would I would share because he was telling it frequently.
Yeah.
There are many things, but
And
this just came to
yeah,
my mind.
yeah. This is why he is haqqani. This is the
Yeah,
true meaning of
exactly.
haqq.
Exactly.
Right? Subhanallah. Yeah. Yeah. طائع كل ذي حق حقه.
Yeah, this is what he
He,
was saying in Arabic. Yeah, exactly.
he said that this was the central principle for Islam, for
Yeah,
Sharia.
yeah. He was
It
keep
is the
telling that.
central. Yeah. Yeah. Subhanallah. Okay. Yani, if you have anything to add, or you want to say something from yourself, or
I think
without me
we
asking.
I think we had enough. People are maybe tired now.
Yeah. That's okay. We're never tired from you, Sheikh,
Yeah.
or from your grandfather's
Inshallah,
mention.
we can share some other stories later on. But I think
Yes.
I ran out of stories for now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Yani, for giving from your time. I know it's late now in Cyprus. So
No,
alhamdulillah, well, you
I
are
am I am
sharing your.
happy, I am happy to share. I am happy to be with our people. I hope they benefit from it, especially this time of lockdown. We don't have much visitors, so this is an opportunity that I can benefit some people. So I feel very happy for the opportunity also.
We ask Allah to open the lockdown in Cyprus. You were mentioning before that it is very tough now in
Yeah,
Cyprus. Hopefully, with these new vaccinations, this thing is starting to open up the world, and we can
inshallah,
visit soon,
inshallah.
inshallah.
Okay,
Inshallah.
I am giving
Thank you
my
very
salam to everyone. Thank you for listening to me. Allah bless all of you.
Yeah.
Inshallah, pray
With
for me also. And I am congratulating month of Rajab. This is a Mubarak month. Uh, our brothers who can fast Monday and Thursdays, I would advise them to fast. It is very beneficial. And this is the month of Allah Almighty. So if anyone can do more zikr, I think Shaykh Mehmet, he released some zikrs to be done for the month of Rajab. If people can do them, there is a lot of benefit. This Rajab, Shaban, and Ramadan, the mercy of Allah Almighty and the blessings are open, and they are there to for us to collect. So I would advise everyone to take advantage of these 3 months.
so thank you very much, Sheikh. And we say Fatiha. You can read Fatiha for us.
هذا فاتح أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين
Ameen.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum.